Praise believed in hard work the same way farmers believe in rain. At 30 years old, she lived in the United Kingdom, far from the busy streets of Nigeria where her life once began. Every morning she woke before the sun, tied her hair neatly, and left for work with one purpose in her heart: to build a future for her marriage. She cleaned offices, worked extra shifts, and saved every pound she could. Her dream was simple: one day she would return home and live happily with her husband Bernard in the house they built together. At the end of every month, she transferred money into Bernard's account and sent him a message full of trust. "Use this money to buy land and build our house," she would say. "Put everything in your name. You are my husband and I trust you." Bernard always replied with sweet words. He told her the land had been purchased, the foundation had been laid, and the walls were rising slowly like a dream coming true. Whenever Praise asked about the progress, he would send pictures of bricks and half-built rooms. Those pictures filled her heart with joy and gave her strength to keep working harder. In Nigeria, the only person who knew all her plans was her childhood friend Vivian. Vivian had been her closest friend for many years, the kind of friend who knew her secrets and dreams. Whenever Praise sent money to Bernard, she often called Vivian and said, "Please remind Bernard not to disappoint me. This house is our future." Vivian always laughed softly and promised that everything was going well. Vivian lived in the same city as Bernard, and that made Praise feel safe. Whenever Praise needed information about the house, Vivian was the person she trusted the most. Vivian would sometimes visit the construction site and describe everything in cheerful detail. She told Praise about the wide compound, the bright living room, and the beautiful location in one of the finest parts of the city. Each description made Praise more excited about returning home someday. She imagined herself sitting in that living room with Bernard, drinking tea and laughing about the years they spent apart. But trust can sometimes be the quiet road where betrayal begins. Vivian listened carefully to every plan Praise shared. She knew exactly how much money Praise sent, when she sent it, and how much she still planned to send in the future. Vivian also spent more time around Bernard than Praise ever realized. She often visited him under the excuse of checking the house for her friend. At first, their conversations were simple and friendly. But slowly, the visits became longer. The laughter became warmer. And the distance between friendship and betrayal began to fade like footprints washed away by rain. While Praise struggled abroad, the house in Nigeria grew faster than she expected. Bernard used the money wisely, but not for the reasons Praise believed. Within a short time, the building became one of the most beautiful houses in the area. It stood tall with shining windows and a wide gate that caught the attention of everyone who passed by. Neighbors admired Bernard's sudden success and often asked him how he managed to build such a house so quickly. Bernard always smiled and said the same thing. He told people his wife abroad was very supportive and hardworking. But behind that smile was a different story. Vivian had slowly become part of his daily life. She visited the house regularly, helped choose furniture, and even gave ideas about the design of the rooms. To many people in the neighborhood, Vivian already looked like the woman of the house. Bernard never corrected them. Instead, he allowed the misunderstanding to grow quietly, like a secret garden hidden behind high walls. After years of hard work, Praise finally felt it was time to return home. She had saved enough money and believed the house was ready. Instead of telling Bernard about her plan, she decided to surprise him. The idea made her smile during the long flight to Nigeria. She imagined Bernard's face when he saw her standing at the airport. In her mind, the moment would be filled with joy, laughter, and warm hugs. She believed this journey would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. When the airplane landed, Praise felt her heart beating faster with excitement. As she stepped into the busy airport, she took out her phone and dialed Bernard's number. When he answered, her voice was bright with happiness. "Hi Bernard," she said. "I am at the airport. Can you come and pick me up?" For a moment there was silence on the line. Then Bernard spoke with a shaky voice. You are where? He asked slowly. Praise laughed softly and replied, at the airport. I wanted to surprise you. The moment those words left her mouth, the line suddenly went silent. Bernard ended the call without another word. Praise stood there holding her phone, confused but still hopeful. She believed maybe the network had failed or Bernard had rushed to prepare for her arrival. She sat on a bench near the entrance and waited patiently. Travelers passed by, families reunited, taxis arrived and left. But Bernard never appeared. After some time, Praise tried calling again. This time the phone did not ring at all. She tried again and again, but every call failed. Soon she realized something strange had happened. Bernard had blocked her number. The discovery left her frozen with shock. She could not understand why the man she trusted so deeply would suddenly disappear the moment she arrived in the country. Yet she still waited for several hours, hoping he would walk through the airport doors with an apology and a smile. Evening slowly approached, but Bernard never came. Praise eventually left the airport and found a small hotel where she could rest. Inside her room, she sat on the bed staring at her phone, dialing Bernard's number again and again. Each failed call felt like a heavy stone dropping into her chest. She sent messages asking if something was wrong, but none of them were delivered. Days passed with the same painful silence. Praise tried to stay calm and told herself that perhaps Bernard was dealing with a serious problem. But deep inside her heart, a small voice whispered that something was terribly wrong. She decided the best way to find answers was to travel to Bernard's village and speak with his family. Surely they would know where he was and why he had suddenly vanished. The journey to Bernard's village filled Praise with nervous hope. She believed his family would welcome her warmly. After all, she was their daughter-in-law who had worked tirelessly abroad to support their son. When she arrived at the family compound, however, the atmosphere felt strangely cold. Bernard's mother looked at her with a stiff expression instead of the warm smile Praise expected. Praise greeted her respectfully and asked about Bernard. But the older woman simply shook her head and said she did not know where he lived anymore. The answer shocked Praise deeply. She tried to explain that she had been sending money to Bernard for years to build a house for them. Yet Bernard's mother showed no interest in the story. Her voice remained distant and unwelcoming, as if Praise were a stranger asking unnecessary questions. With nowhere else to turn, Praise returned to the city. She stayed in her hotel room and began making inquiries about Bernard. One of the first people she tried to contact was Vivian, her best friend. Vivian had always been close to Bernard and surely she would know something about his sudden disappearance. Praise called her number with relief, hoping to hear a friendly voice. But the call never went through. The discovery felt like another sharp wound in Praise's heart. Two people she trusted more than anyone else had suddenly erased her from their lives. The confusion grew heavier with each passing moment. She could not understand why both of them would avoid her at the same time. The next morning, Praise decided to visit the old apartment she once shared with Bernard before traveling abroad. Walking through the familiar streets filled her with mixed emotions. Every corner held memories of laughter and dreams. When she reached the apartment building, she noticed someone sitting outside near the entrance. It was Bernard's longtime friend Mark. Mark recognized her immediately and stood up with surprise. He greeted her warmly and invited her inside to sit down. When he saw the tired expression on her face, he asked what had happened. Praise slowly explained everything, the years of hard work, the money she sent, the blocked phone calls, and the strange behavior of Bernard's family. Mark listened carefully without interrupting. After hearing her story, Mark looked deeply troubled. For a moment he remained silent, as if weighing the heavy truth inside his mind. Finally he spoke slowly. He told Praise that Bernard no longer lived in the old apartment because he had moved into a new house in one of the most beautiful areas of the city. The news confused Praise because Bernard had never mentioned moving there permanently. Mark then offered to take her to the house. They traveled together through the busy city streets until they reached a quiet neighborhood filled with elegant buildings. When the car stopped in front of a tall gate, Mark pointed toward a large house standing proudly behind it. Praise stared at the building with wide eyes. Something about it looked familiar. Then the gate slowly opened. As Praise stepped inside the compound, the world around her seemed to freeze. Standing near the entrance of the house was Bernard, and beside him was Vivian. Vivian's hand rested gently on her swollen stomach. She was pregnant. For a moment Praise could not breathe. The two people she trusted the most in the world were standing together in the house she had paid for. And in that single moment, Praise realized she had lost everything. Praise stood at the gate, unable to move. Her eyes moved slowly from Bernard's face to Vivian's swollen stomach and back again. The compound was quiet, but inside her heart 1,000 questions were shouting at once. The house she had built with years of sacrifice stood proudly behind them, shining under the bright afternoon sun. Every brick in that building carried a piece of her sweat and hope. Yet the two people standing there looked at her like she was a stranger who had walked into the wrong place. Vivian was the first to break the silence. Her hand rested on her stomach as she took a small step forward. There was no shame in her face, only a calm expression that confused Praise even more. Bernard stood behind her, looking uneasy. His shoulders were stiff and his eyes avoided Praise's gaze. Mark, who had brought Praise there, stood quietly beside the gate, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. Praise finally found her voice. Her throat felt dry, but the words came out slowly. "Bernard, what is this?" she asked. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. She had not come to beg or scream. She had come for the truth. Bernard rubbed his hands together nervously and looked away again. Before he could answer, Vivian spoke. "Praise," she said calmly, "things changed while you were away." Her voice sounded almost gentle, but every word carried a sharp edge. Praise stared at her in disbelief. This was the same friend who used to call her sister. The same friend who promised to protect her dreams. Now she stood in front of her like the owner of the very life Praise had worked for. Bernard finally stepped forward. He cleared his throat as if preparing to give an explanation that would somehow fix everything. But the moment he looked into Praise's eyes, his confidence disappeared. For years he had avoided this moment. He had hoped Praise would never return unexpectedly. Now the truth stood in front of him like a mirror he could not escape. "Praise, listen," he began slowly. But the words felt empty before they even reached the air. Praise raised her hand slightly to stop him. She did not want excuses. She wanted honesty. The silence between them grew heavy again, and even the birds flying above the compound seemed to disappear. Vivian looked around the compound proudly. "This house is beautiful, isn't it?" she said quietly. Her tone carried a strange confidence that shocked Mark. Praise followed Vivian's gaze and studied the building carefully. The wide balcony, the tall windows, the polished gate, everything matched the pictures Bernard had once sent her. Only now she understood something painful. Those pictures were never meant for her future. They were meant to keep her sending money. Vivian continued speaking as if explaining something simple. She said life had moved on, and people could not remain stuck waiting for someone living overseas. Her words sounded smooth, but each one felt like poison dripping slowly into Praise's heart. Mark could no longer remain quiet. He stepped forward, looking from Bernard to Vivian with clear disappointment. He had known Bernard for many years, but even he had not expected something like this. Mark remembered the day Bernard first told him about Praise sending money from abroad. At the time he believed Bernard was a lucky man with a loyal wife. Now the truth stood before him like a broken mirror. "Bernard," Mark said firmly, "this woman worked day and night for you." His voice carried frustration, but Bernard still avoided eye contact. Vivian folded her arms calmly as if the words meant nothing to her. Praise remained silent, absorbing every detail like someone slowly waking from a long dream. Praise walked slowly toward the house. Every step felt strange, like walking through memories that no longer belonged to her. She touched the gate gently and looked at the walls. For years she had imagined decorating those rooms, choosing curtains, planting flowers in the compound. Now the house felt like a stranger wearing her clothes. She turned back toward Bernard. "So this is the house I built," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with deep pain. Bernard opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The truth was too heavy to carry with words. Mark finally spoke again. He revealed something Praise did not know. According to neighbors, Vivian had been visiting the house almost every day during the construction. Many people believed she was Bernard's wife. Bernard never corrected them. Instead, he allowed the story to grow until everyone accepted it as the truth. Praise listened carefully. Each new piece of information felt like another puzzle falling into place. The blocked calls. The cold behavior from Bernard's mother. Vivian's silence. Everything suddenly made sense. The betrayal had not happened in a moment. It had grown slowly over time while she trusted them completely. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Praise looked at Vivian's stomach again and understood the situation clearly. The child growing inside her friend meant this betrayal had already moved far beyond secrets. It had become a new life forming inside the house she paid for. But something unexpected happened inside Praise. Instead of collapsing under the weight of the truth, she felt a strange calm spreading through her chest. The tears she expected never came. Instead, her mind became sharp and clear. She realized that while she had lost money, a house, and a husband, she had not lost herself. Praise took a deep breath. "I see everything clearly now," she said softly. Bernard looked surprised by her calmness. He expected anger, shouting, maybe even insults. But Praise simply stood there like someone who had already crossed the hardest part of the journey. She turned toward Mark. "Thank you for bringing me here," she told him sincerely. Mark nodded, still feeling uneasy about the situation. Praise then looked once more at the house, studying every corner carefully as if memorizing it. As Praise prepared to leave the compound, Vivian suddenly spoke again. "You should move on with your life," she said casually. "Things cannot go back to the way they were." Her words sounded confident, but Mark noticed a small flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Praise paused at the gate and looked back one last time. Her voice was calm but powerful. "You are right," she said slowly. "Life cannot go back. But it can move forward." Her eyes rested briefly on Bernard before she continued walking toward the road. Bernard watched her leave with a strange feeling in his chest. For the first time since she arrived, he felt something he had not expected: fear. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the strongest storm. Praise walked away from the compound without turning back. The afternoon sun shone brightly on the quiet street, but inside her heart everything felt heavy. Each step away from the gate felt like leaving behind years of sacrifice. The house that once lived in her dreams was now a place filled with betrayal. Behind her stood Bernard and Vivian, surrounded by walls built with her hard work. Yet Praise kept walking, her face calm and her back straight. Mark hurried after her. He felt guilty for bringing her there, but Praise stopped him gently. She thanked him for telling her the truth and for showing her where Bernard lived. "You did the right thing," she told him softly. Mark nodded, though his heart still felt uneasy. Before leaving, he asked where she would go next. Praise looked toward the busy road ahead and said quietly, "Back to where my life can begin again." That evening Praise returned to her hotel room. The room was simple, with a small table, a chair, and a window that overlooked the crowded city streets. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall for a long time. For years she had imagined returning home to happiness. Instead she had discovered a painful truth that changed everything. But as the hours passed, her thoughts slowly became clearer. She realized something important. Bernard had taken her money, and Vivian had taken her trust. But neither of them had taken her strength. The same determination that helped her work tirelessly abroad still lived inside her. That strength could build a new future just as easily as it had built that house. The next morning Praise woke up early. Instead of feeling lost, she felt strangely peaceful. The decision in her heart had already been made. There was nothing left for her in that city anymore. The past had closed its door, and she would not waste time knocking on it again. She packed her small suitcase carefully. Each item she folded felt like a quiet goodbye to the life she once planned. After checking out of the hotel, she called a taxi and asked the driver to take her to the airport. As the car moved through the busy streets, she watched the city pass by without regret. At the airport, the crowd moved quickly in every direction. Families greeted loved ones, travelers hurried toward their gates, and announcements echoed through the large building. Praise stood among them calmly, holding her ticket back to the United Kingdom. The same airport where she had waited for Bernard days earlier now felt completely different. When the airplane finally took off, Praise looked out the window. The city below became smaller and smaller until it disappeared beneath the clouds. She felt a deep breath escape her chest. The pain of betrayal still existed, but it no longer controlled her. Ahead of her was a new chapter she would write with her own hands. When Praise returned to the United Kingdom, life continued moving quickly. She went back to work, but this time something inside her had changed. Before, every hour she worked was for someone else's dream. Now every effort she made belonged to her alone. She began saving again, but this time she opened her own account and planned her own future. Slowly, her confidence grew stronger. She took small business classes in the evenings and started learning how to invest her money wisely. The same discipline that once built a house for Bernard now began building a life for herself. Months passed, and Praise transformed in ways she never expected. Her coworkers noticed the quiet strength in her attitude. She no longer spoke about the past with sadness. Instead, she focused on her goals. She started a small online business selling African clothing and accessories, using the little savings she had left. At first the sales were small. But Praise was patient. She remembered the years she worked tirelessly before, and she knew success required time and persistence. Gradually, customers began to notice her products. Orders increased, and her business slowly started growing. One afternoon, while organizing packages for delivery, Praise paused for a moment. She thought about everything that had happened, the money she sent, the house that was taken from her, the betrayal of her husband and her closest friend. The memories no longer made her angry. Instead, they reminded her how strong she truly was. Life had tested her with a painful storm. But that storm had also revealed something powerful inside her heart. She had learned that trust is precious, and dreams must be protected carefully. Most importantly, she learned that a person's true wealth is not money or buildings, but courage and self-worth. 2 years later, Praise stood inside her own apartment. It was not as large as the house in Nigeria, but it was warm, peaceful, and completely hers. Every chair, every table, and every decoration had been purchased with money she earned for herself. Her small business had grown steadily. She now worked for herself, managing orders and shipments from a bright workspace in her living room. The journey had not been easy, but each step had made her stronger. Sometimes friends asked if she still thought about Bernard or Vivian. Praise would smile gently and shake her head. She did not hate them, and she did not wish them harm. The past had already taught her its lesson. Holding anger would only keep her tied to the life she had already left behind. Instead, she focused on gratitude. She was thankful for the strength she discovered within herself. Without that painful betrayal, she might never have realized how capable she truly was. One bright morning, Praise stood by her window watching the busy street below. People hurried to work, buses moved through the road, and life continued like a flowing river. She thought about the young woman she once was, the woman who trusted blindly and gave everything away. Now she was different. She had learned that trust should walk beside wisdom. She had learned that betrayal can destroy a dream, but it cannot destroy a determined heart. And so Praise continued living her new life with courage and peace. Because sometimes the house built on trust may collapse. But the woman who built it can always rise again and build a stronger life for herself.